Well, our episode today finds Abraham going all out with radical hospitality and sacrificial generosity, literally killing the fatted calf to feast these mysterious strangers with three with prime Angus cheeseburgers and milkshakes. The lunchtime conversation takes a somewhat disquieting turn as Abe begins to realise that the Lord who had been speaking to him all these years, these past 25 years, and who had only just recently spoken to him to reiterate his promise, the Lord who had been phoning it in and Zooming him, was now at his table, somehow in person, because he makes the same promises that God had been making all these years. Of course, Sarah, overhearing this, does the sums in her head and cacks herself. Yeah, right. Good one. Which leads to a very awkward, "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did," conversation with the guests. Lunch comes to an end and Abe walks these strangers three down the driveway to see them off. I'm pretty sure it's not just my experience, but so often I get to the point where I'm on someone's doorstep or in the driveway or on the footpath even, and they're seeing me off, when they choose that moment to finally open up and drop a clanger and proceed to have another hour's worth of conversation, and you're thinking, hang on, I was just leaving. It's like, I've got stuff to do, fair income, I can't get away from these people. That's when you think, couldn't we have talked about this like inside where it was cooler, warmer, like with more shelter, more private? Anyway, as the Lord is standing next to the ute ready to go, he says to Abe, "Okay, I'm going to let you in on my personal business because we're like this now. I want you to see who I really am and how I roll so that you and your kids will follow me and get the full benefits of everything I'm promising you and thereby bless everyone." So how does the Lord do that in the course of our reading? He drops a clanger in the driveway, looking down over Sodom like Obi-Wan and Luke looking over Mos Eisley spaceport. "Sodom, you'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must go there to see it firsthand, because the outcry that has come up to me is very great." Remember right back in the start of the Bible in Genesis chapter 4, Abel's blood cried out from the ground when God came in person to hang out with he and his brother in the cool of the day. The first instance of outcry in the Bible was the blood of an innocent victim. From this story onward, outcry in the Bible is about people without power being beaten down, used, abused, and murdered at the hands of their government and at the hands of their society. From here, the cry goes up over Sodom, over Egypt, over Rome, and down to our day. What is this particular outcry over? Sodom is mentioned 53 times across 14 different books of the Bible. So there's plenty to go by. Ezekiel sums it up for us. Sodom had pride, excess of food and prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and the needy. Some people get obsessed with the sex crimes that will be related in chapter 19, but this is what is wrong with the city. They will not hear the cry of the poor and the needy. Sodom is alarmingly not too far removed from our own society and our own civilization in that regard. But spoilers, we'll get more into that as we read in chapter 19 next week, what it's like on the mean streets of Sodom and why God might have taken the kind of action that he eventually did. How great is the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah, and how very great their sin. I must go down and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me. If not, I will know. Abe reacts out of alarm, possibly even anger, because he's no deal. What ensues is the most remarkable dialogue, like haggling in the marketplace, because he knows his nephew Lot and his family are living and working down there. Abe knows that if the sovereign ruler of all has shown up for a personal visit to inspect the situation's probably going to go sideways real quick, because Sodom and Gomorrah aren't much chop. So Abe sticks his neck right out. He gets right out of his place, recklessly reminding the Lord about his sense of justice for the sake of the innocent, and thereby interceding for that evil regime and that wicked city in the process. It's in his own argument that Abe and we get in the middle of the Lord's personal business and learn what makes his heart tick. You see, the Lord is willing to carry the whole wicked city for the sake of a handful of innocent people. That's what the word forgiveness literally is in the Old Testament, to carry someone's sins. God will carry the whole sorry lot of them for the sake of a handful of innocent people. How many cities and nations were run by corrupt and unjust rulers then and now that the Lord carried for the sake of a few innocents among them living there? How many peoples and nations were uncaring and indifferent to the suffering of the least among them then and now? I am grateful that this is the heart of the living God. Because of it, our city and our country still remain. There's a simplistic phrase used by many Christians too easily. God says it, I believe it, and that settles it. They mean well, but in our story today, God says it, and Abe says, hang on! Far be that from you! Far be that from you! Abe learned something in the dialogue and in the verbal wrestling match. God didn't call Abraham or us to obsequious, blind obedience. He isn't hunting for yes men and women who act like robots and who are far too literalistic in taking him at his word. Cities like Sodom and Ramses and Rome and Moscow and Beijing and Washington and Canberra are built on yes men and women. And our rulers expect them to obey blindly without argument or question. God says, argue it out with me. Come on, I dare you. Because we'll learn something in our dialogue with him, in prayer and in the reading of the scriptures. This book is not a diktat. It is a wrestling partner. It's not a neatly packaged book of answers dropped down out of heaven to make our lives convenient or easy. So many people also dismiss the Old Testament or flat out refuse to read it because they claim the picture of God found in there is one of a vengeful, angry and terrifying tyrant. Contrary to a lazy surface reading, this episode reveals that the Lord is compassionate and merciful, slow to anger, willing to forgive and willing to carry the wicked for the sake of the innocent. He is not aloof or distant as a sovereign, but takes the cry of the oppressed personally. He comes in person to see, to listen, to judge, to do right, to arrest evil and to rescue. He is not willing to destroy one innocent person with the guilty or the good with the evil, but he also cares about the evil people, giving them plenty of time and opportunity to change their ways and do the right. In today's episode, we learned that he is not willing to ignore an ongoing cry for help. He gives space to let the people of Sodom change and do the right thing, but he will not walk past a cry for help. He walks towards it in person to see as a last resort. Sound like anyone we know? Sounds a bit like the Christmas story, doesn't it? Like the Easter story. like Jesus' story. For the sake of one righteous and innocent son of Abraham, Jesus, the Lord has carried the countless billions of the human race from death to life and from evil to goodness. This last Friday, I nearly didn't go to an impromptu get-together of the Ministers Association here in town. I thought, it'll be just another gas bag session. It's nice to hang out with these guys, but I've got stuff to do, you know. But I couldn't stay away. I had to go. The Spirit compelled me. A retired pastor from Toowoomba, of all places, was there, my hometown, Ian Shelton. And he was there to talk about how the unity of ministers and churches can impact a city for Jesus. One of his main points about the role of the united people of God in a city is to hear the cry of the poor, the needy and the oppressed. He then, to my great surprise, proceeded to unpack Genesis 18 along similar lines to me. I nearly invited him to preach for me today because it's the same passage, same sermon. Although he added this, and I pray I do him justice as I was reeling from surprise. He said all cities belong to Jesus, including Sodom. Yeah, he's right. They don't belong to the forces of darkness or the wicked people who inhabit these places. Our cities are lost to darkness because God's people are too busy and we're deaf. In Genesis 18, the Lord goes from verses 18 and 19 saying, you have been blessed to be a blessing, straight to verse 20 talking about, I've got to go and hear the outcry of the victims of Sodom. The blessing and the hearing are irrevocably connected. Who will hear the outcry of Mooroopna and Shepparton and beyond? Abraham is blessed by God and so is meant to hear the outcry, to intercede in prayer and to act. That's our job in this city as the children of Abraham and Sarah, as children of the living God, to hear the outcry, to argue it out with him. What are you doing about these people? And to act on their behalf. We are not blessed so that we are puffed up and can do well for our own sakes. Thanks very much, while others suffer and we walk by indifferently. We are blessed to be a blessing to the poor, to the needy, and to the oppressed of this city and the world beyond. Sodom was lost because in the end there was not one person left within the city gates to hear the cry. Will we be people who walk past or hear? For the word of the Lord, thanks be to God.